My name is Jeff Morgan. I am from Dallas, Texas. I'm going to speak on child support abuse in the state of Texas. And I will say it's not merely abuse. I would almost say that it is a criminal enterprise that takes place in the state of Texas. And it takes place under the guise of doing what's best for the kids. It's very much abusive. It destroys families, it destroys men, it destroys women, it destroys parent-child relationships. And let us also mention the fact, too, that the state of Texas profits off of every dollar that it collects in child support. It collects federal funds, so the state of Texas has an incentive, a financial incentive, to actually make sure that child support is collected, no matter what the damage may be to the individuals involved. Just last week, I heard about a person who actually works for the Office of the Attorney General, and he told many people about this one lady who had a child, and they needed to determine who the father was. So after the 12th person was tested, finally the father was discovered. So she was asked why it took 12 people, why it took 12 men being tested to find out who the father was. And her response was, she started with the person who was richest and worked her way down from there. Well, eventually number 12 was somebody who worked the streets. I don't know exactly what his profession was, but she knew that there were financial benefits by starting with somebody who was richer if somehow he could be the father. And the state of Texas and the Office of the Attorney General would make sure that that man would pay child support. Now, the Attorney General's office will turn a blind eye to the fact that she had sex with at least 12 people, 12 men, to get pregnant so that she could get a child support check. That's okay, evidently, because the Attorney General's office is very concerned about children, not so much about morality, which probably helps to explain their thug enterprise, but this is one of the incentives that the child support system in the state of Texas gives to a woman. If I can find somebody who was rich, I can get a bigger paycheck. Last week I spoke with another person, a former police officer, and he was running for sheriff in the near future here, and he said, Jeff, in my community we have women that have children by 3 different men. And the reason they have children with 3 different men is because that brings them 3 different paychecks. So having children by a man and then remaining single is a good source of income. And by the way, the Attorney General, once again, his office, will make sure that that man, whoever that man is, will pay, even though the woman may have been actually trying to use him to have a child to collect money. There's nothing wrong with that. The Attorney General's office is just concerned that somebody pay for the child. There's another man that I know of. He had 3 children and an adopted child as well. Now, he was a person who was forcefully divorced by his wife against his will. Nobody agreed with the divorce. Everybody thought it was wrong. They tried to get counseling and help for the woman, but in the state of Texas, we have this thing called unilateral no-fault divorce, which becomes divorce on demand, divorce for any reason, divorce for no reason, and often the person who initiates the divorce gets rewarded. So in this situation, this mother who did not work was able to get the 3 girls. As they were fighting about the child support issue, they first wanted my friend to pay $5,000 a month. Eventually, his attorney struck a deal in which he would only have to pay $2,750 a month plus provide insurance. So as my friend turned to the attorney and said, "Why did you do that? Does it take that much money to raise your children?" And the attorney confessed, "No, it really doesn't, but you make more money than I do." So once again, you have children that are used as a financial commodity, a bargaining stick in the area of divorce. In addition, as I mentioned, to the money that he had to pay, he also had to pay insurance. And furthermore, because his wife did not work, he was a sole provider. Not only that, the judge made him pay over $200,000 in attorney fees, many of which were his ex-wife's. So his ex-wife was allowed to sue him and sue him and sue him and keep fighting, and the judge made him pay for it. Altogether, the divorce cost him over $225,000. More importantly, it cost the children their college fund. My friend is an outstanding man. He is a man of tremendous character. By the way, also a former military person, a guy who did everything right. And he has to pay. If he does not pay, the Attorney General of the state of Texas may take away his professional license, which would cause him to lose his livelihood. So he is forced to pay $2,750 plus provide insurance to his children. And by the way, he also has 50-50 shared custody. So his wife still does not work, but she gets $2,750 a month, and the Attorney General of the state of Texas will make sure that he pays that money because he needs to be a good father. Even though she divorced him, he gets stuck with the child support. Somehow this is considered to be a just decision in the state of Texas. Then there is another man that I saw, and I witnessed this myself. This was in May of last year. I drove down to Houston because I could not believe that another friend of mine was being pursued for child support payments for a child who was not his. And the interesting thing about this is that the Office of the Attorney General knew that he was not the father of the child. There were DNA tests that proved that. In this courtroom before the judge, there were three attorneys. There was the attorney for the mother, there was the attorney for my friend, and there was the attorney who represented the Office of the Attorney General, because the Office of the Attorney General must ensure that we look out for our children, must ensure that somebody pays child support. Now, the fact got brought out that the DNA test proved conclusively that he was not the father. And the mother actually said, I agree, he is not the father. However, the Office of the Attorney General would not be happy with that fact. They kept on hounding him. He had to spend almost $40,000, I believe, to try to defend himself. The Office of the Attorney General in the state of Texas froze his accounts, put him through a lot of stress. My friend, once again, is a military veteran, a hero. I've heard of some of his stories, outstanding man, another guy who is simply outstanding. And yet he is being prosecuted by the Office of the Attorney General as if he is a criminal. By the way, because of the financial hardship that they put him under, he is now out of business. And the Office of the Attorney General will not recompense him a penny, even though they knew they were pursuing fraudulent charges. They knew it, but somebody has to pay. To make matters even worse, when I was watching the hearing take place, the lady even confessed that she had been raped by a man, and I believe that that man flew to Mexico. So here was a man who evidently impregnated her when he raped her, and my friend has to pay child support for him. Why don't they go after the man who left the country? Well, there's no money in that, and somebody has to pay. So I believe that they coached her in how to give testimony to try to make him become the father, even though they knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was not. These kind of things don't just happen to men. So for example, I know one lady, and she was very happy, a stay-at-home mother. Her husband was out working and made a decent amount of money, over $400,000 a year. But something happened where the father decided to run off with this lady's girlfriend. So he files for divorce, runs off with this lady's best friend, marries her, and starts to interfere with her parenting time with the children. The judge never ever convicted him of being a felon, never reproached him, never reprimanded him at all. But what this judge did instead, and this is a judge out of Tarrant County, Judge Judith Wells, she chose to make this lady pay him child support. Now, once again, she was a stay-at-home mother. She was a great mother to the children, but the judge made her work, and she was able to get a job for about $30,000 a year, and she had to pay her husband, who ran off with her best friend, who was making well over $400,000 a year. She had to pay him child support. This is a completely unjust system. And by the way, I don't know if my friend filed for bankruptcy. I believe she did. But her mother, who was retired, spent her retirement funds trying to help her daughter, and eventually had to return to the workplace. This is what happens with the abusive child support system that we have in the state of Texas. There is another case coming up later this week in Parker County, and it will be taking place before Judge Graham Quisenberry. And once again, I just happened to sit in on one of these proceedings in Judge Graham Quisenberry's court, and to say that he was abusive is an understatement. He did not like my friend going in pro se, and he also did not like the fact that he's not paying enough child support. This was the big thing that Judge Quisenberry was concerned about. You're not paying enough child support. I just can't get over this fact about the child support issue. Now what was happening was there was a child between them, a son. This son has claimed that the stepfather has abused him and also said he does not like his mother. The reason he does not like his mother is because his mother was suing his father. The mother came up to him and had a figure, a 5-figure number, and said, "Do you think your father can afford this? Do you think your father can pay this?" And the son at that point realized, "You're suing my dad. I'm done with this. I hate this. I don't want to be in the middle of this." And now she's trying to claim parental alienation after these abusive actions. But Judge Graham Quisenberry is really dead set on setting my friend probably into prison. By the way, Judge Graham Quisenberry also will not listen to the testimony of the teenager who says, "I want to live with my dad. I want to be away from an abusive environment in which my stepfather has abused me, in which I don't even like my mother anymore because of what she's done to my father." Finally, there is another man who has just been imprisoned just within the last week by Judge Patrice McDonald out of Montgomery County Courts. Now, by the way, Judge Patrice McDonald also made a man pay $73,000 in some type of a payment because he married somebody, and after they were married, he found out that she was also married to somebody else. She was being a bigamist, which is illegal in the state of Texas. But this great Judge Patrice McDonald has made him pay support. This is the same judge that heard the case of Josh Jaros. Now, Josh is another outstanding man, a man who wanted to be a missionary or a youth minister, a man that is just by every means, by every person that I know, he's considered to be an outstanding man, a tremendous father, a man who has sacrificed tremendously for his children. And once again, Josh was forcefully divorced against his will. People who are familiar with the case know that his wife was responsible for the divorce, yet nevertheless, my friend wanted to keep that marriage together, did not want divorce, wanted to try to work things out, and wanted to have a family. However, once again, in the state of Texas, Texas always, without exception, grants no-fault divorce. And because it's no fault, we can pretend that things like adultery or abuse or something like that, that's not really a big deal. It's just no fault. We can't need to get beyond this stuff. You know, adultery and abuse or something like that, no, we're not going to look at this. No-fault divorce actually covers up a lot of sins and evil. Well, recently, my friend was about ready to file for bankruptcy because of the financial burden that he was undergoing. Again, a tremendous father, made many sacrifices to be with his children, has actually been instrumental in some legislation being passed down in Austin. And some people actually think that this is retaliation against Josh because of his effectiveness, because he has been advocating for 50-50 shared parenting for quite some time. And because a bill or two got passed that he was very instrumental in, perhaps this is retaliation. But Judge Patrice McDonald has now determined that Josh needs to go to prison for 180 days because of poverty. Now, in the Texas Constitution, Article 1, Section 18, it says that no person shall ever be imprisoned for debt. And yet, here we have Judge Patrice McDonald putting him into prison because he can't afford the child extortion payment. Josh is a tremendous father. By the way, his wife, who filed for the divorce, who was the reason for the divorce, a divorce against Josh's will, makes more money than Josh does. But nevertheless, she deserves to have child support. So Josh Jaros is now in jail, and even though he's on the verge of bankruptcy, but you know, there's a lot more that goes on with this. So Josh has an apartment. who's going to pay for his apartment while he's in jail? Well, once again, his parents are going to be paying, or at least helping, with money from their Social Security check. This is also elder financial abuse, sponsored by the Attorney General's office. The Office of the Attorney General in the state of Texas, in my opinion, is guilty of elder financial abuse. And they're guilty of all sorts of abuse. And by the way, now they have 2 children who love their dad tremendously, love their dad, and they're going to have to look up to their dad as being a criminal because of this criminal thug judge, Patrice McDonald. He is in prison for 180 days. And let me add one other thing. In this hearing, by the way, the wife had no attorney, but the attorney was there representing the Office of the Attorney General. Now, this Judge Patrice McDonald did not permit Josh to get a state-appointed attorney. Somehow that's denied him. You know, he's not worthy of having a state-appointed attorney because it's child support, and he needs to pay that child support. So Josh has no attorney, and before they even heard what was going to be taking place, 3 men came in, 3 bailiffs came in with handcuffs, with shackles, and they led Josh away, and they put him in jail. An outstanding father. And by the way, his ex-wife is sitting beside the attorney and consulting with the attorney for the Office of the Attorney General. This is disgusting and appalling and horrendous. And yet this is what happens. And no one will talk about the atrocities that get committed by the Office of the Attorney General. Now, most people would say the Attorney General is the person who stands for righteousness. Well, in this case, unfortunately, the Attorney General's office has been designated the thug-in-chief as far as collecting child support. It is a criminal syndicate as far as many people are concerned. And by the way, I'm not against child support, never said that. But I am definitely against unjust child support, whether it is a man paying a woman or a woman paying a man. Whatever the case may be, many innocent people are paying when they've been divorced against their will. And the state of Texas makes no moral distinction between these things. And furthermore, the state of Texas re-victimizes the victims themselves. And in the case of Josh, I believe are also guilty of committing elder financial abuse. When you have parents that are sending their Social Security check to help their son, that is something that's just despicable that's happening in the state of Texas. So anyway, tomorrow, October the 2nd, at 301 North Main Street in Conroe, Texas. This is at the Montgomery Courthouse. There will be a rally for Josh Giros. If you can be there, please make it. This is a protest that needs to be heard. We need to be one in voice and body and spirit, talking about the injustice of the system. And even though the Office of the Attorney General, even though our legislators, even though Governor Abbott himself has talked about the great need to take care of our children, you are not taking care of children when you are throwing innocent fathers and mothers into jail. You are in part responsible for the destruction of families and the destruction of bonds between fathers and their children and mothers and their children. It is despicable, the things that you are doing. And for the legislators who pretend that this is okay as well, shame on you. Shame on you that you do not have the backbone to stand up and say that something is wrong with our state, that we are destroying families indiscriminately. Thank you.